Elizabeth Holmes didn't just sell a product, she sold certainty. The certainty that a single drop of blood could replace needles, laboratories, and weeks of waiting. The certainty that medicine was about to change forever. And the certainty that anyone who doubted her simply didn't understand innovation. For years, almost no one questioned it. Not investors, not board members, not partners, and not the media. Because Theranos didn't look like a risky startup. It looked like the future. Until it wasn't. Elizabeth Holmes dropped out of Stanford at 19. She said she wanted to revolutionize healthcare, to make medical testing faster, cheaper, and less painful. Her vision sounded noble, ambitious, and urgent. She wasn't a scientist with decades of experience, but she didn't present herself that way. Instead, she positioned herself as a visionary, someone who could see what others couldn't yet imagine. She spoke about changing systems, not perfecting details, about outcomes, not processes. And Silicon Valley loved that language. In a culture built on disruption, confidence often mattered more than proof. Holmes understood this instinctively. She didn't argue with critics. She outgrew them. But this story wasn't really about intelligence or ambition. It was about what happens when belief replaces verification. The promise of Theranos was breathtakingly simple. One small device, one finger prick. Hundreds of blood tests, no needles, no labs, no delays. If it worked, it would change healthcare globally. Doctors could diagnose faster, patients could avoid painful procedures, entire medical systems could be rebuilt around speed and accessibility. The idea was so powerful that many people stopped asking the most basic question, does it actually work? Because once the promise took hold, skepticism felt almost unethical. Doubting Theranos wasn't just doubting a company, it was doubting progress itself, and that made disbelief uncomfortable. Money followed quickly. Theranos raised hundreds of millions of dollars from investors who believed they were backing a once-in-a-generation breakthrough. But capital alone wasn't what made the company untouchable. Authority did. Theranos built one of the most impressive boards in Silicon Valley history. Former secretaries of state, military generals, senior government officials, people whose reputations carried enormous weight. Experience replaced scrutiny. Reputation replaced technical review. The message was clear. If these people believed in Theranos, who were you to doubt it? Elizabeth Holmes reinforced that image meticulously. The black turtlenecks, the carefully lowered voice, the calm, controlled presence in interviews. She didn't look like a startup founder. She looked inevitable. And as the company scaled, so did the pressure to maintain the narrative. Because when something becomes big enough, failure is no longer just an option. It becomes a threat. Inside Theranos, the technology did not work. Blood samples had to be diluted to function. Results were inconsistent. Quality control repeatedly failed. Tests that were supposed to run on Theranos machines often couldn't. Instead of solving the problem, the company hid it. Most blood tests were secretly run on traditional lab equipment made by other companies. The Theranos device itself was often used only for demonstrations. The system became a performance. Employees were isolated from one another. Information was compartmentalized. Questions were discouraged. Concerns were framed as disloyalty. At this point, Theranos faced a defining choice. Slow down, admit the limitations, and risk losing trust, or protect the image and hope reality would eventually catch up. They chose the image. What mattered most was not accuracy, but continuity, not truth, but momentum. And everything continued to function, as long as no one asked too many questions. Reality arrived in 2015. Investigative journalists began asking how Theranos actually worked. Former employees spoke up. Documents surfaced. Stories contradicted the public narrative. The illusion cracked. Regulators stepped in. Inspections revealed serious violations. Partnerships collapsed almost immediately. The trust that had taken years to build vanished in weeks. What shocked observers wasn't just that Theranos failed. It was how little substance had existed behind the promise. There were no reliable systems, no validated technology, no way to justify the claims that had defined the company. Theranos shut down operations in 2018. The company that promised to change medicine couldn't prove its core idea ever worked. Elizabeth Holmes was charged with fraud. The story shifted from failed innovation to deliberate deception. Investigators uncovered how deeply the company had prioritized narrative over reality. This wasn't a single bad decision, it was a pattern. Secrecy over transparency, authority over evidence, belief over verification. The system rewarded confidence and punished doubt, and that system didn't collapse on its own. It was allowed to grow unchecked. Theranos didn't succeed because the technology was good. It succeeded because the story was powerful. Investors wanted the next breakthrough. Patients wanted hope. Board members wanted to believe they were part of something historic. And no one wanted to slow things down by asking uncomfortable questions. Elizabeth Holmes didn't fool Silicon Valley alone. The system fooled itself. When belief replaces verification, failure becomes inevitable. When vision outruns control, collapse is only a matter of time. Theranos wasn't a breakthrough that failed. It was a promise that was never real.